Okay, everybody, I think we'll make a start. Welcome to those of you that have joined us. Today we're going to run this webinar as one of a series of webinars, really trying to expose some of the secrets and uncover some of the secrets of success of smart law firms. And we've got a couple of real lawyers and practice managers with us today to help unravel some of those secrets. It's great to see so many of you on the call, on the webinar today, and hopefully you will gain something from this hour-long or so session. My name is Julian Bryan. I'm the managing director here at QUILL. I know, looking at the attendee list, we have lots of QUILL users on the webinar, but some not QUILL users. We're a provider of legal accounts, practice management software. We also provide outsourced cashiering, payroll, outsourced typing, etc. If ever you need any of those services. So success doesn't just come from one ingredient. I think of success as a blend of baking and mixing of ingredients to make that recipe smart and successful. I use the analogy, and I love using analogies. My wife's an excellent cook, but I put it down to her choice of ingredients and the way that she mixes her flavors and textures together that have helped me certainly grow through lockdown into the shaped person that I am today. Now, if we could move on to the first slide, please, before we sort of get into the guts of the webinar, some housekeeping. Hopefully most of you by now are familiar with the way these webinars work. You should have on the right-hand side of your screen a little pop-out panel. If you do want to ask a question, there is a section there, pop in a question. I do have a partner in crime behind the scenes who is keeping an eye on the questions. We'll try and pick them up during the webinar itself. Failing that, I do promise that we will get back to you at the end of the webinar with answers or directions for answers in terms of what we're covering. So if we just move on to the first slide, please, or the next slide, please. Brilliant, thank you. So we can all talk about technology and how it makes our lives simpler and easier. But why technology? Why should we be embracing technology? Why should we be taking technology on board? And for me, there is one simple answer. If we don't, somebody else will. And I think any webinar or meeting these days can't go by without mentioning the pandemic. But the way I look at things is, what if this pandemic had hit us 20 or 30 years ago? What if would the technology be around that would have meant that we could have generated a vaccine, for example, so quickly to save so many lives? What about the medical technological improvements that we've seen unfold over the last 18 months? And then, of course, there's the internet, Wi-Fi, Zoom, Meet, Teams, whatever, and so on. So ultimately, we need to embrace technology just to keep up the pace with what's happening in our world. Because if we don't, somebody else will. And if somebody else does and we don't, we'll be out of business. It's pretty simple. I think if we move on to the next slide, I think the other thing that maybe it's a generational thing, but there is this huge expectation in people these days that they want everything now. And I look at my own family use of WhatsApp. Just as a little example, we go from grey ticks or one grey tick to 2 grey ticks to 2 blue ticks to seeing somebody typing. We're all looking for that instant response, and there goes a ping, an instant response to to a message. We want everything instantly. Take that on to the legal world, and let's even look at the concept of onboarding a new client. You know, many of our millennials find the concept of a printed utility bill, a printed bank statement, and photo ID is a bit clunky and outdated, and a process that's not appealing to them as they look to buy hopefully their first home. So I think we're seeing more technology come in place to deal with these demands of new generations. Now, if we could just move on to the next slide, please. I think the goals of technology are very much around empowering your employees, wasting less time, saving you money, minimizing risks, but maintaining compliance, very, very important, to scale and grow your business. And also you can use technology to analyze your data to get an insight into performance of your business. I think what I'm looking to achieve on our next slide, please, is from today's webinar, is for you to have good practical advice on technology for law firms from our two speakers who I'm going to introduce in just a second. What tech practices need and don't need. Hybrid working, going paperless, managing change. And we'll just have a look at a few tools that you might consider using if you haven't already. Now, if we just look at our next slide and our guest speakers, we've got a great match today. Looking at the number of people that are attending the webinar, I think half of you are partners in law firms, half of you are practice managers, and that's a great mix with our two speakers of Johdi and Andrew. So Andrew Guile is a founding partner at GN Law. Andrew specialises in police actions, mental health work, probation, litigation. GN Law is based in just north of London. And Andrew tells me that when he started his firm back in 2006, there were just 10 of them. Today, there's over 50 professionals in the firm. And have a look at GN Law's website and have a look at Andrew's profile. I'm going to embarrass him for a moment. You'll see that in his spare time, Andrew writes children's books. So if you are looking for a Christmas present, there's never too early a moment to get your order in and get some wonderfully illustrated books from Andrew ready for those Christmas stocking fillers. And then of course we've got Johdi Hutchins. Johdi is a partner and practice manager at Galloway Hughes, a very different firm to GN Law in that Galloway Hughes focus on property. They have a team of 23 lawyers working out of 2 offices southwest of London. Johdi started life as account manager 11 years ago, and she's now a partner and practice manager. And Johdi tells me that she had a great time as a concert promoter in her previous life, and doing tours for people like Prince, Tom Jones, Neil Diamond, and she was also Michael Ball's PA, I'm told. So welcome to you both, Andrew and Johdi. Hopefully we'll focus the questions around legal as opposed to writing and concerts. You can follow up with both of them afterwards about their other lives later on. So the way that I want to run this this next sort of half an hour, 45 minutes or so, is very much like a question time, Fiona Bruce type question time, where I act as Fiona Bruce. I've got a few pre-prepared questions I'm going to pop at Andrew and Johdi, and they're just going to give you their very practical insights into how they run their business. They're going to share with you some of their non-NDA'd secrets, if you like, and hopefully you'll be able to take away a few tidbits from today in terms of how you can use technology to run your firm. So Andrew, I'm going to start with you, if I can do gentlemen first, just for a moment. And you know, you started your law firm back in 2006, and if you think back to where it's evolved today, what advice would you give to other partners in your shoes on how they would approach technology?
I think when I look back, one of the big well, one of the things I remember is trying to put, establishing a firm, trying to put everything into place right at the start, and to gather up all the various reins of a business and try and control everything. I mean, if I look at the practicalities of what we have now, what really allows us to run the business, I suppose you've got hardware and software. In terms of hardware, we still do have an office-based physical server, so that's the server for email, and it's still, it's a central document storage and things of that nature. So we've still got that. And recently, I mean, we had been thinking of going Office 365 in terms of going into the cloud for our email, but recently with Office 365 having been hacked, I think a couple of times in the last 3 to 6 months, we were actually quite pleased that we hadn't done that. And our tech support, external tech support company, have certainly recommended we stay with a physical fixed server for the time being. The only other sort of physical hardware we still do have physical phones, although literally within 2 or 3 weeks we will probably reduce from 50 handsets to maybe just 2 or 3. I think we'll keep a handset with our receptionist, and probably with accounts and maybe with one of the directors, but otherwise we'll be going fully voice over IP or VoIP, and just having a virtual phone on our laptops. In terms of software, we use Microsoft Outlook. I mean, for us, it just integrates fabulously. Not least, of course, with yourselves at QUILL, and so the integration between Outlook and QUILL is fantastic for us in terms of just allowing somebody to sit at their desk and not have to move around and mess around with things like that, and also. It integrates perfectly with our encrypted email system, which we use Rmail. We've had that for a number of years now, and again that integrates perfectly with Outlook. And then lastly, really in terms of software, is, as I say, QUILL. We use that, and we've always looked for a system where we have a file management and account system which is integrated. We've always had that. We certainly wouldn't go with anything that doesn't have that level of integration. But one of the big pluses for us as a legal aid firm, specifically with QUILL, is that QUILL allows us to obviously record our time and control and marshal all of our documents in relation to our legal aid side of the practice. But then when a file finishes, QUILL allows us literally at a click just to upload that data straight to the online reporting system with the legal aid agency. So that was a massive plus for us. I mean, for anyone watching this who's interested, I think we've been with you, QUILL, now for about 2 years, I think, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Prior to that, we were with Practice and their system called Osprey TM. At least that's what it was called at the time. But Osprey didn't have that level of functionality. And that was certainly it was a massive reason for why we joined you guys, because the billing process with any legal aid work is it's an utterly miserable experience billing a legal aid file. You can actually spend more fee earning time in terms of value billing the file than you're getting paid for. So anything that automates it and makes it quicker and slicker and smoother is a godsend, and certainly from a profitability point of view and reducing the number of people that we need, sort of like physically writing out bills and sending them off to the legal aid agency. So I think for me that's hopefully a general sort of overview covering most of the points of how we operate.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andrew, and good to see you got all these things integrating and working together. And it's interesting. You have a mix of your mail server on premise, but you have a cloud solution for your accounts and practice management systems. And yeah, of course, cyber security for all of us is essential, and something that I'm sure we'll come back to through this. So, Johdi, what would you add to that in terms of your own experiences at Galloway Hughes?
We have evolved. Every time we've come across an issue, we've evolved around it. We started with a spreadsheet, or Kate and Carl started with a spreadsheet. I came on about 6 months later, and they'd just gone on board with Iris, and that was mainly because that was the historic package they used in their previous company, so they knew it. But it was a bit of a Rolls Royce. It was a lot of money for, they probably used 10% of it for conveyancing. And you know, we then went on to as well to Osprey, but that didn't work for us, and we came on to Quill. I think we came on to you about 6 years ago. It might be about that. And you guys have constantly evolved, which suits us because we're always moving. If I, you know, you said about, you know, what we know now, back then, I think in hindsight they would have spent more money on a bespoke system that suited themselves 100%, rather than at the moment it's still always going to be 80%, because there's going to we don't time record, so we don't use that function on Quill. But at the time you're setting up, you don't have the money to do that. You don't have that kind of a level of investment, and hindsight's a wonderful thing. But we just keep on moving. We were on Office 365 about 5 years ago, and I would say we benefit. I've got my cousin is in Microsoft. He was high up in Microsoft. So on a skiing holiday, I was asking him about it, and he told me all about Office 365 and told me to go with it. So I did it. We went on to VoIP phones about 8 years ago because one of the partners' friends had recently gone onto it and recommended the firm to us. We were doing an office move at the time, so it suited us to go on to this technology there and then. So we kind of evolve with everything that's going along, but we're keeping our eyes out on what we need and what's out there that could make the job easier.
Okay, that's really interesting. I think the one thing when we were chatting a day or so ago was about listening, and I think the one thing that we love to try and do at Quill is listen to what you guys are telling us in terms of what's working and not working. And I always think of when you're choosing a piece of software, it's about choosing the business as much as it is about choosing the software. And I like to think of people that use Quill software as actually joining the Quill community, where we all support each other, and it's about finding solutions to problems, not just about technology per se. Okay, well that's great, and that's helpful, and that gives I think our listeners and viewers a bit of an insight into you both and where you've come from. So if we're moving on, what to you, Andrew, would you say is absolutely key? What do you need and don't need in your firm?
Well, we couldn't function without Quill. I mean, we run all of our files through it. We generate all of our letters through it. We do time record, again for the legal aid work that we do, which is sort of at least 2/3 of our turnover in terms of how big that is to us. We have to time record everything. The rules of the legal aid agency is that they should be able to come in and see what to a penny what they're spending with us at any one time. So we have to do that. Outside of that, all the other work that we do, court protection work, private family work, wills, trusts and probate, the other sort of private areas of the practice, we still time record and do everything in relation to that. And we generate our bills through Quill as well. So all of that is done through that. So we couldn't survive without that. And then in terms of the client experience, I suppose the big things really are our phone system and email, and as well with controlling cases and communicating with other sides, other parties, local authorities, courts, whoever it might be. So so Quill, Outlook, and phone systems are what really allow us to function. Certainly when the pandemic kicked in last year, just to touch upon what you said a short while ago, without this level of technology that we've got now, I mean, the pandemic, frankly, for our practice, even 5 years ago, probably would have crippled us, and 10 years ago, definitely would have crippled us. We would have had no way of working in the way that we have. Whereas, I mean, prior to the pandemic, we didn't have anyone working at home. In fact, I'll openly say that as as one of the 3 directors, we were completely against doing any such thing. natural suspicion of people just, you know, not working hard, or, you know, slinking off, or not being available, and all this sort of business. That was a place that we did not want to go, but had to. And yes, off we went. But you know, laptops, VPNs for security, multi-factor authentication for security, those things now are essential for us. I don't think in terms of firms, I'm sure Jodi's firm is far more of a target for fraudsters than we are. We don't have anywhere near the sort of money going through client account that I'm sure Jodi's firm does. But you know, security, hardware in terms of laptops, and software in terms of you know, Quill, Microsoft Outlook, and soon VoIP phone systems are essential, and hopefully will also, you know, impact upon the quality of the client experience as well, which I think with our current sort of like clunky old phone system, well, I say old, it's less than 3 to 5 years old, but yes, as you were talking about innovation and, you know, the movement, you know, we resisted VoIP 5 or 6 years ago and still went with a good old clunky pick up the phone system, and frankly, I think that was a bad decision. I think we should have gone VoIP earlier, but the reason why we didn't go VoIP earlier is that we had so many outages at our office, with the internet line going down. Even though we've got backup lines and all this sort of stuff, we'd still find the internet going down, and so we were just terrified of the internet going down, VoIP going down, and having no phone system. At least if the internet went down, people could still get through to us by phone. But I think in recent years we haven't had any outages at all, and so I'm certainly more than happy to go VoIP now, and I think it's going to be, well, I think it's going to be great from what we've seen of the demonstrations. And I know, Jodi, you've been VoIP for a long time, so you can probably give more information about it if people are interested in VoIP.
We also invested in our own fibre.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and that stopped the outages.
Yeah, that's very sensible, and something that I have to say that we did as well. So before I leave you, Andrew, I think, am I right in saying that you use an online payment solution as well?
Yes, we for about 18 months now we've used something called, I don't know whether it's called Legal or Legal, but it's L-E-G.
Yeah.
I think it's legal. But yes, so that's a payment solution where we have access to an online, we can log into an online system, and then we generate a payment, a request for payment for a client. That then gives us a link which we can pop into an email, and then the beauty for the client is that they get an email with a link that they just literally, you know, go on to and follow straight through into a payment system, where they can just put in credit card details and things of that nature. I mean, in terms of smoothing and making it easy for clients to pay us, to pay bills, to pay money on account, we've found it, you know, actually an absolute revelation. And I know soon you're going to be integrating it into Quill, I think. So
that's the plan. That's the plan.
Control that from Quill as well. So I mean, we didn't know how much clients were going to use it initially, and we actually we put the link at the bottom of our bills as well, so it'll be in the email. But if they open the bill, they can just go to the bill, look down the bill, and they can click at the bottom of the bill and go through the link to payment as well. So I think our accounts were telling me that at least 80 to 90% of all the money that's coming in from clients paying bills, putting money on account, is now coming through Legal. So
wow.
And it's improved cash flow.
Good. Oh, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. And Jodi, you use a mix of some very traditional technology, you were telling me yesterday, as well as some new things. So what would you know, what would you say you need and don't need? And are you collecting fax machines at the moment, by the way?
Tell you what, the fax machine broke yesterday, and it wasn't our fact. The analog line went down. Some builder's gone through a line in Esher, and so our fax machine is not working, and we are beside ourselves on what to do. So I brought the fax machine home, because I've got an analog line here, so we can send the faxes for certificate of titles and replies to requisitions. But yeah, we still need it.
And what other technology would you say you need and don't need?
Well, very similar to Andrew. We need the internet because everything is cloud-based with us. We're Office 365 and we're with Quill. We have the network for our precedents, but all the templates now are on with Quill. We use your SMS which is a slow burner. Started slowly to get our account details out because of fraud. But we also use it if we're trying to notify people of completions because they've unplugged the landline and they're not really listening to the mobile phones. So it's, the internet, you guys, and Microsoft, and a fax machine.
Okay, so someone on the webinar has asked a question specifically for you, Jodi, and the individual says, our practice is looking to update the way we produce reports on title that can handle the PDFs and create a structure in which the individual transaction can be reported. We've only found litigation-focused software so far. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, I saw that. For us, it's Quill and it's Adobe, and it all merges together and they produce. But I don't do what the girls do in the office, the girls and the boys in the office. I can find out, but those are the two things we use.
Brilliant. Okay, well, tell you what, I've not looked at the list of who that's come from, but we'll join you up at the end, and this person who's asked this question will certainly feed back and get you two talking, and hopefully help each other working. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, and we'll talk, as we are now sort of hopefully towards the end of this this pandemic. We've talked about words, remote working, hybrid working, or whatever. Now, I think again we've got, and it's very interesting. We've got two firms roughly in the same geography of the country, but doing very different types of work, and have got a very different view on home working, hybrid working, office working. Jodi, you've been in the office pretty much most of the time through the various lockdowns, and what's your rationale for that, and what's your plans going forward?
So the reason was because we did furlough some staff. Some staff did work from home. So if there's 23 of us, by the time you've taken out a third for working from home, a third for furloughing, that kind of left us with a skeleton staff anyway. And there were certain staff members that physically couldn't work from home and asked to work in the office. And the decision was made is that if they were in the office working, we as partners were going to be with them. We were not going to let them sit in the office on their own. So there was 3 partners in the Esher office and 1 partner in the Richmond office, 2 staff in the Richmond office, and there was 5 of us in the Esher office. But my commute is 3 minutes, and sometimes I don't put my foot on the brake. So it's not like you guys that had an issue of getting to work. My husband and my kids were at home. I would prefer to be in the office, and it was perfectly safe. It was a very large office, and we were 5 meters apart.
Is that got something to do with your husband and the kids that you went to the office?
Possibly, and the 3 miles. But we could all work together. We could all work with people in Scotland or people in the office. The way in which we're all set up, especially with the VoIP phones, because the system we're on, you can have the app on your handset. So staff are transferring, the girls who are working from home, who are taking calls on the main line, can just push it through to the mobile, which is on the system. And also for staff making calls out to clients, you're not giving away their mobile numbers. It's still the office number. So it protected them. So we were kind of all set up so that we could work wherever. And so we took on board staff choice and circumstances, and it worked all the way through.
And staff choice going forward is to be pretty much office-centric?
Yeah.
Okay.
Practically everyone's back. We've got 1 still working from home due to long COVID. Right. So she can work from home, but is very frustrated and wants to be in the office. But we already were allowing staff to work from home if they wanted to, as long as they were on the work laptops and on secured devices and stuff.
Andrew, your story is a bit different, I think. So where have you got to with staffing?
Yeah, very different. I mean, when the first lockdown came in last March, we, apart from having a skeleton crew in the office, which involved one of the directors to open the post, our head of accounts who was happy to come in, 1 person on reception and an office junior to run around and do photocopying for people, or to to get posts out, so people would be working at home and pinging letters into the office that would get printed and sent out. So apart from those 4 people, everybody else went home. Practice manager, all the secretaries, even one of our receptionists took a I think we did have a VoIP handset, so that went home, and she was doing reception from her front room. So everyone went home. I mean, we had, I think, more by luck than judgment, we had a lot of laptops in the business for a number of years. Lots of desktops, when they'd gone pop, had been replaced with laptops. People just seemed to prefer them, and I think that was very lucky. I think we only had to buy 6 or 8 laptops, something like that. I mean, had we needed to buy 30 or 40 laptops, it would have been, quite a big capital outlay. So we were a little bit lucky, but we very quickly had to get up to speed, and we didn't know how it was going to go. I mentioned earlier that we were very much against any sort of home working or flexible working prior to the pandemic. But we found, almost without exception, everybody worked as well at home. And 2 departments in particular, our Court of Protection Department and Family Department, which I think are both similar in as much as they're heavily court-based, heavily email-driven departments. They either improved on their productivity, and some people, particularly the more senior solicitors in the family department, are just flying at home. I mean, their time recording going up from 6-7 hours a day to 8-9 hours a day comfortably. And there's more than one person who would happily not come back to the office at all. But so we have certainly embraced, and will be moving forward embracing home working. We're going to start, we're bringing people back a day a week at the moment. June coming up soon will be 2 days a week, and then July 3 days a week. And that's where we think we will stop. But I think we'll probably end up somewhere, by talking to staff and seeing how things work, between 2 or 3 days a week, and it might vary between departments. I mean, we do a lot of mental health work, which is going out to see psychiatric patients in psychiatric hospitals and representing them at tribunals to try and get them out. So that work is 60%, running around the country anyway, seeing clients. So I don't think the actual functioning of that department is going to be changed all that much. It's just that they'll probably be out for 2 or 3 days straight, rather than coming into the office, going out on appointments, and then coming back to the office. So yes, we've very much embraced it. The majority of our staff are scattered around London, and I think even the ones that are relatively close to our office in North Finchley, I think they all appreciate not having to commute. I mean, it's saving them lots of money for people who have to use the tube and use public transport. And even with me, going in and out of the office, I live up near Berkhamsted, up the A41, south of Aylesbury, north of Hemel Hempstead, and that way. So, I mean, on a good day, maybe 30-40 minutes to get into the office, and the traffic's bad. If I time it wrong, leave a bit late, it can take me over an hour. So I save between, hour and 20 minutes and perhaps 2 hours a day on the commute, which I can spend a little bit more time in bed, and nevertheless still get a bit more time at the desk. So it's a win-win for me, really. So I've very much enjoyed it, and I think the vast majority of staff have as well.
Brilliant. I think the message that I take from this, and I think and just to share Quill's experience as well. We actually asked, there's about 100 staff in Quill in total across our cashiering and payroll bureaus. We asked everybody what would be their ideal, and we're not making any promises. And the inclination was probably more along Andrew's direction, where most people wanted to be in the office very little. And we're aiming to be on the basis that everybody has to be in 2 days a week, which 2 days will depend on teams, so that every team does get together at some point during the course of the week. But I think the key thing for any business, and I know we're talking about technology today, but when it comes to staff engagement, is listening to your staff, and listening to your staff does seem to generate that level of staff engagement, and acting on what's being said, and we certainly feel that is of great value to us at Quill. Great, both of you, thank you very much indeed for that. That's very helpful. So we'll move on. I feel slightly embarrassed with this next sort of topic in this whole technology section, and it's called going paperless. And for those of you that can see me, I'm sitting here with my crib sheet of paper, and I'm asking Andrew and Jodi to talk about going paperless. But Jodi, you've been paperless for, well, from what I understand, almost donkey's years in terms of, well, certainly a long time. And so tell me more about your move to going paperless, and what have you done to address it, to accommodate no paper on the desk?
We like I said earlier, we take note of what other people around us are doing. It was our accountants that had gone paperless, and they were the ones that were championing that it was more efficient and all the other benefits of being paperless. And so having looked around their office to see how they actually deal with post that comes in and the initial bits of paper that come into the office, we then worked out how we could do it. You know, everything that's scanned into the office, everything that's scanned as soon as it comes in, it goes into a cupboard. If it's essential documents, and it waits for 6 months, and if it's got dust on after 6 months, it gets shredded. With Quill, you guys, I don't know if Andrew's has done it as well, but our case types have all got bespoke folders. So we have told staff, you know, we've got a list of what goes in which folder, so anybody can open a matter and know exactly where they're going to find a piece of paper. Because if the search function is not great and they've not enabled the document correctly, and we've got naming protocols, then it's a needle in the haystack situation. So from the beginning, we set very clear guidelines of what we wanted folder papers to be called. You know, what's not certificate of titles or COTs or, you know, abbreviations. By standardizing this, it means that anybody can look at anything and find it and not get frustrated. And I think with paper files, everyone's so used to having sort of correspondence pin and, you know, the folder that has all the financials in. As long as you replicate that on the system, it's quite simple. And it's all about systems and putting them in place and being quite strict with them. And then it does work. And we've got a couple of people who are still not paperless, but the majority of staff are, and also new staff that come in. It takes them a while to get used to the system, but once they get used to it, you know, they're flying. And as I said earlier, we've all got 2 screens, couldn't do the job on 1 screen, and some of us are lucky and we've got 3 screens. But that's the investment.
Yep. Okay. I think that is important, isn't it? And trying to go paperless with a single screen is almost impossible. I know you have even 3 screens, and I certainly have a second screen at home. It's interesting hearing how you're using the document management system DocsHub to manage your files. I don't know whether people know that you can actually set up a pre-populate a set of subfolders for each matter. So that if you've got a particular way that you want your file to be structured, and clearly you, Jodi, you've got your team well disciplined in the way that they create those files. You can set up that subfolder structure, and then people will make sure that they put the relevant document in the relevant place. So great use of the system, and clearly some good training from you. I know you've had some teaching experience in your past to get that message across. I know we've got an answer to a question that we had earlier, which I'll come back to in a minute. So thank you for sharing that, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But Andrew, where are you on this paperless journey?
Desperate to go paperless, I think, is the bottom line. Yeah. Again, you know, it's, prior to the pandemic, we were fully paper, or, you know, completely paper file oriented. We had one of my fellow directors has been desperate to go paperless for a number of years, but when we looked at it 3-4 years ago, the only way that we could have done it would have been with sort of like a £15,000-20,000 scanner and something utterly absurd like that could scan thousands of pages. Because of the legal aid work that we do prior to the pandemic, that the basic rule was, if you had to send in a file for assessment, send the whole file. You know, I mean, if that file filled 2 boxes, you'd have to scan the lot. And you know, in some of the cases that we have, children cases and stuff like this, local authority, public law stuff, children being taken away or kidnapped or bits and bobs, international child abduction and things like that, you know, there's a serious amount of paperwork, and you have to send everything, even documents that have come from the other side, because you've claimed time for considering them, and they have to consider whether or not the time you've claimed for considering 2,000 pages is actually reasonable or not, and they want to actually physically see what you've considered. The oversight is absurd. But as soon as the pandemic came in, that changed quite dramatically, where they thought, well, okay, we've sent everyone home, which they did. The legal aid agency sent everybody home, and therefore they just simply couldn't operate with paper anymore. They just had to just cut it on day one, on 23rd of March or whenever it was. And so they had to very, very swiftly, literally in the space of 7 days, decide what they were going to do. And they really cut it back and said, you know, well, just send us the claim form, send us the legal aid form you signed with the client, send us their proof of benefit and all these sort of things, and send us your timesheet. And they just went off that with virtually no paperwork or supporting paperwork at all. And not surprisingly, you know, the people who work for the legal aid agency are actually human. And they loved it as well. They loved not going through all these files with a tooth comb just to knock, you know, £1.20 off a £3,000 bill, and they do that. And so it's changed. There's been a massive sea change. That they're going to ramp it up a little bit. We're going to have to give them attendance notes for everything over 60 minutes. So they do want to see some things, but telephone calls, little letters, all these sorts of stuff, gone. They just don't want to see them anymore. Not interested. And so we've got to a situation now where we have almost a complete file on QUILL, and we have a paper file as well. It's an absurd situation that we're in at the moment. And we find that QUILL is actually more complete than the paper file half the time, because people forget to print stuff they've been doing when they've been working at home. So the sooner we go paperless, the better. We're in a position to do it. I think we just strategically throughout the business just need to really think about what the practical implications will be, and then move towards it as soon as physically possible. But if we haven't achieved it by the end of next year, I'll be very unhappy, and I would like to think that we will seriously be moving towards it in the autumn.
Okay, that's great. Just picking up on a question that's come in. I think I'm going to direct this at Jodi. I think the question, if I understand it, is using a fax machine rather than faxing from emails safer?
We use a fax machine because lenders often have 0800 numbers, and when you fax through the software on your computer, they can't handle 0800 numbers. So that's one of the reasons why we use fax. And also, yes, one of the company policies is that we do not send our account details over an email of any sort. So our replies to requisitions, which go to the other side on a completion, has our bank details in. And yes, sending it by fax is far safer.
And SMS, I believe.
And SMS, well, we do that for clients, to sending our account details to clients for money on account. We couldn't do the SMS for lenders or the other side solicitors, because it's got to go through a text machine, mobile.
Absolutely.
But no, that's why we have to use the old-fashioned fax, and it does work, except when it doesn't work.
Brilliant. Okay. Someone here has asked him. Well, we'll come back to that question. Someone's raised their hand. We'll probably come back to that hand question at the end, if that's okay, David, just in a bit. I just want to, with time pressing on, just cover a couple more points. We've talked a lot about changing things, and Jodi, you've certainly gone through a lot of change, or managed a lot of change in your firm. What advice would you give to to people on the call about managing change and moving through change?
I mean, we're lucky because we're smaller than you guys. So when you want to implement change, or when we want to implement change, we come up with an idea, we run it with a couple of people. If it works, then we ask everybody to start doing it. You know, I know larger firms will be managing change for 2 years. They'll be running out something, and then suddenly, as soon as the 2 years is happened, they've gone live with it, something new's coming through. So we're lucky in that we're small. We can communicate quite quickly by walking across the room. There's not all these meetings and stuff. And we'll have a chat. We'll be organic with it. We'll try it this way. We'll try it that way. Does it work for you? Doesn't work for me? Then we'll change and we'll implement, and then we'll ask everybody to do it. And so the feedback and the process is much quicker. But it's trial and error. And also talking to everyone, because I don't do the jobs that the secretaries do and that the fee earners do. So the system's got to work for everybody. And so by talking and communicating and trialing and making sure the change is worth the change. You know, a lot of people change for the sake of changing, but if it isn't broken and it makes you self-efficient, and often, you know, Andrew was saying about how whoever you send your stuff to is now allowing it to be electronic. We were driven by the land registry, because suddenly registrations used to do a piece of paper and with a check on it and send it through, and that's why you had your 6 weeks priority. You know, as soon as they went electronic, everything was scanned in and it's done in an instant. It could be registered in a day. So we were driven by them to become paperless or have it on the system. So we're reacting to other people as well as our own needs of how we want to service a client. The quicker we do, we're not time recording, we're fixed fee. So the quicker we turn a file over and the quicker we can get it going and out the door, the quicker we can do it. So the maths is there.
Yeah, brilliant. Andrew, anything to add to that, just in the last breath?
Not really. I mean, I think that the main thing, every change within our business is normally, you know, start with the directors, and then we involve the associates, and then we get feedback from them, and then we'll roll it out to staff. But you know, I think it's largely about communication, especially if it's something that you think, you know, people perhaps aren't going to like, or they'll think, well, that's more difficult than the old way of doing things. So, and the purpose of communication is just to make sure they understand why we're doing it, and that we're not doing it for the sheer hell of it, that there is a purpose behind it, normally client care driven with us, or financial driven. But whatever the reason is, make sure that it's communicated, make sure they understand it, and just make sure that everyone feels able to speak up and say if they've got an issue with anything, not in terms of it changing what's going to happen. I think people at our practice know that if we're bringing something in, we're bringing something in. But at the same time, you should still listen to see whether or not, you know, if they've got a particular problem, can it be eased in a certain way, and things of that nature. So I think our staff all are more than willing to speak up and offer an opinion, and they know that we will listen and try and help or change things as much as we can. You know, while staying within the bounds of trying to achieve what we need to achieve with the change.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Good. Right. I'm conscious that we're time ticking by. Now, Jeanette, I know you're in the background. I need you to help me here. So I'm going to try this. I've not done this before, but David Housekeeping is got his hand up to raise a question. Jeanette, if you can unmute David and let him ask his question. Hopefully, we between the three of us, we will be able to answer his question, and then just to get Andrew and Jodi teed up, we have a subsequent question, which is, what is the first step to going paperless? But first of all, if we can get David to speak, can we do that, Jeanette, in the background?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, David, we can hear you. We did hear you. You can't hear us, David.
It's green now. Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you. Yes, fire away.
Hi, we've been using QUILL for the last half year, since November, and overall we're very happy. But there's two features which we'd like to see, and I wonder if there are any plans on them in the future. Two of the main things, almost wherever you move in online stuff, is search facilities and sharing facilities. At the moment, there's no universal search, so that we can go into QUILL and see the contents of all documents. So that's Word documents and readable OCR PDFs. Mm-hmm. And then on the sharing, typically, say I dictate something, secretary types it up, tells me it's in QUILL, so I have to go onto QUILL, go to the matter, find the document. If there was a share button beside the document, all you have to do is press share like you do on your smartphone all day long, and then send me the link. I go to the same document, edit it, and then I can send back the link and say, post it off, email it off, or send it to a colleague for their comments and so on. And there's just this link. We're always working on the same document. So I wonder if there are any plans on those two.
Sure. Okay. So I'm probably going to pick the second part of your question up offline. I think there's something we can help you with there, but I would like to get one of my colleagues to help you. Search. Yeah. So search. We look at search in two different levels. One is in relation to finding clients, matters, contacts, and that is pretty well covered within our what we call our Elasticsearch tool. Deep document search is something that we are asked for, but is something which is a pretty hefty project. It is possible. It will require a lot of computing power on our part. I mean, what you're asking for is a Google-like search, and it's something that we have looked at. It's a bigger project than one would perhaps first appreciate, but it's something that is on the roadmap. Well, it's on the roadmap. It's in the vision. To get it on the roadmap would say it's coming quite soon. It's probably not going to be around in 21, certainly, David. But it's something that will come eventually, albeit it's going to be expensive to deliver and expensive to maintain, because deep document searching is something that Google have banks and banks of servers to support. So it is something that will come with a cost. Right, I'm going to move on, just very quickly then, to the question about where do you start going paperless. Jodie, you started first, so where do you start?
By investing in a really good scanner. Spend whatever you can afford on a really good scanner, and then once you've got the scanner set up, we have it set up so that you scan to folders, and those folders are on the network, and then it's up to the individual to dip into their folders or their secretary, and they rename documents and then drag and drop them into QUILL. So it's like a post box, but it's delegating the responsibility out. So everything gets scanned into somebody's subfolder, into folders on the network, and then the support or the fee earner can go in there, pick up their post, rename it according to the protocol, and drop it into the right folder in QUILL, and then it's done and dusted. It's in.
Andrew, anything to add to that?
No, as I think I indicated earlier, we looked at what sort of scanner we thought we would need, that being our starting point, and it was going to be 15,000-20,000, and we said no, thank you. I mean, I don't think we would need to spend anywhere near that at the moment, and I think one of our directors has been doing the majority of the scanning because he's been one of the ones in the office, and he's been scanning bills and stuff, and I think his cost 300 quid, and it's absolutely super as far as he's concerned. So yes, definitely a scanner, and then of course you need a document system to control things. QUILL will do that. Obviously you can, as Jodie says, look after things on your server as well, but in addition you'll of course need a whole lot of rules. So I don't know, as a Lexel practice, we have an office manual and policies coming out of everywhere you can imagine, and things like this. So we when we go paperless, we'll need to look at our policies and procedures and all this sort of stuff, and make sure it's clear to staff as to what they need to do and where they get things from, like your postal system, Jodie. We'd need to document and document all these procedures. So you've got the paperwork behind it as well if you're Lexel accredited, and if you're not, you might still have those sorts of things knocking around in your business in terms of telling people how to do things.
Okay, brilliant, good. Right, I'm conscious of the time. Can we just move on to the next slide, please? Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Jodie. And move on to the next one again, please, Jeanette, if you wouldn't mind. Right, I just thought we might just sort of wrap up really with some sort of anecdotes, and I jotted down a list of sort of technology tools and tips that I certainly have found pretty useful, and we at QUILL have found pretty useful, that you might like to sort of make a note of, and they're not necessarily QUILL centric. If you're going to court bundling, Bundle Docs is a great piece of software for producing court bundles. It does integrate with our document management system. If you need that, Document Direct. If you're short of secretarial teams, Document Direct have a great outsourced typing service, all UK based, all ex medical or legal professionals, so they understand the lingo. I stick down my Fitbit or Garmin. Some of us have been locked up at home for quite some time. Apart from today, I typically take a lunchtime walk. I've clocked up my points, and I even get a discount on my healthcare policy as a result. So good fun. That a bit different. Form Evo, if you're using forms all the time, legal forms integration, something that we integrate with, a great piece of technology, online technology that you can access anywhere. Legal, we heard legal mentioned by Andrew. Slack is an alternative to Teams if you're looking to communicate with employees and people across organizations. Great little messaging tool. Jodi talked about SMS. SMS not just for single messaging, for bulk messaging. I know in QUILL we have one member of staff who does not have a smartphone, and so therefore cannot access WhatsApp. With SMS, you can bulk message everybody, irrespective of the technology that they're using. You guys talked about scanners, 15 grand or even what the figure was on scanners. As somebody who's been working at home for the last 16 months, my scanner is here on my mobile phone. I use a little app called Tiny Scanner. It's great if I've got to sign off documents or scan a few legal documents. In my role as MD at QUILL, a 3 or 4 page document is scanned in Tiny Scanner. It's brilliant. Trello, if you're looking to do a bit of planning, thinking through your processes, Trello is a great brain dumping tool. Money laundering, Verify, a great money laundering checking tool. Again, it does integrate with QUILL, but you can use it independently of QUILL if you wish to. If you're playing around with Google Documents and what other tools are there? You know, CRM tools like Capsule. You can join all these tools up with a great little product called Zapier. Zapier allows you to join up disparate systems. When we're doing our marketing for events like this, we join MailChimp up to a spreadsheet. So any responses that you give us, or even go to webinar, any responses you give us in terms of whether you're going to attend, automatically get dumped on a spreadsheet, saving a person having to capture all that information and put it on a spreadsheet. So the technologists talk about APIs. Do you have an API to integrate your systems? Well, Zapier, you look at the word, is a zappy way of integrating your API, with API in the middle of the word. And then, of course, you know, it goes without saying, Zoom, Google Meet, or Teams for your virtual meetings. Google Meet is what I call a lightweight tool, probably less sophisticated than the likes of Teams, but is really neat and helpful in terms of productivity. I'm sure you've all got your own little tools that you've come across and use on your phone or on your PC to make your lives easier. Those are just a few examples of what I've come across in the course of the last 16 months or so. Okay, folks. Well, I think we're coming up to 2 o'clock and the end of the session. It's been really good. I mean, hearing the real practical, what I call earthy stuff from Jodi and Andrew has been great. Thank you, Jodi and Andrew. There might be 1 or 2 questions left hung over. We will pick those up, folks. So please don't think we've forgotten you. And I think a few takeaways. So let's move on to the takeaway slide. The first thing is, I think that this has already been said. Make the tools you've already got work harder. Are you using 20% of your system or 80% of your system? And a lot of people think they want a Rolls Royce and don't really need it. Make the tools that you've got work to their best. Invest wisely. We've seen the price of scanners come down. That makes a lot of sense. Understand what your clients need and then employees need. Listen to your employees, even around technological decisions. I think that's really, really important. You don't always need those bells and whistles. Paper light is the way forward, maybe the first step to going paperless. And I think you know, as again we've heard our two speakers say, embrace technology and remain agile and responsive to change as technology changes. And thank goodness many businesses have done over the years. Or I think we'd be looking at a very different sort of post-mortem of the last 16 months of pandemic. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I will say that this is one of a series of webinars that we are looking to run over the course of the summer, over the course of some lunch times. We've got a marketing one lined up for late June, early July, and also some employee management and leadership team development planned for later in the summer as well. So do come back and join us again. We will share in the follow-up Johdi and Andrew's contact details. If you do wish to reach out to either of them, then I know that they'll be happy to share their experiences with you. And thank you both, Johdi and Andrew, for joining us today. Really appreciate that. And thank you everybody for coming along and listening. I'm going to say adios. And I think hopefully Jeanette will stop the webinar. Not quite sure where we are. We're still here online. Oh,